Chapter 10. New Treasures. Jasmine and Babak rushed toward the sound of Kav's voice and found him buried up to his waist in a pile of dirt and rocks. The tunnel entrance behind him was blocked. Kav looked completely shocked as he explained as he was climbing out of the tunnel, the ceiling collapsed. His face turned red as he strained to push himself up. I can't move, he cried. Don't worry, we're going to dig you out, Jasmine exclaimed. She, Babak, and Raja immediately started digging, pushing away mounds of dirt and rocks. Jasmine eyed the exit, now completely covered, and told Babak and Raja to put the dirt behind Kav to try to avoid another collapse. Then she asked Babak if he could lead them to another exit once they freed Kav. Yes, Babak said, nodding. I could take you to one closer to the palace. Kav was almost free from the rubble when suddenly his eyes went wide and he gasped. Jasmine and Babak turned to see a big brown snake coming up behind them. Nobody move, said Jasmine, reaching out and placing a firm hand on Raja. Kav, who was still stuck, started to panic as he watched the snake slowly slither toward him. It's coming closer, he whispered fearfully. Jasmine had read about snakes with Miss Layla. She knew that they didn't like to go near people and would normally bite only if they felt threatened. The worst thing we can do is panic, she said calmly. Stay very still and we'll be fine. We'll all be fine. Kav stared into Jasmine's eyes, listening to her words and trying his hardest to remain calm. But the snake continued to come toward him, and he trembled with fear. Hold your breath, Jasmine said. She knew that if she gave Kav something else to focus on, it would help him stay still. We'll all do it. 1, 2, 3. All three held their breath as they watched the snake curl through the dust and dirt. Finally, it made its way past Kav and disappeared into a small hole by the cave wall. They were safe. They each breathed a huge sigh of relief and dug even faster to get through the remaining dirt and rubble as quickly as possible. When Kav was finally free, he tried to get up, but his ankle gave out beneath him. He slipped and yelped in pain. My ankle, he cried. I must have twisted it when I fell. Jasmine knew Kav wouldn't be able to walk back on his own. He stood perched on one foot as he looked down, feeling ashamed and helpless. We'll help you, said the princess. Babak and Jasmine stood on either side of Kav. Put your arms around us, Babak told him. Kav lowered his head and glanced at Babak. Thank you, he said sincerely, wrapping his arms around Babak's and Jasmine's shoulders. Babak smiled and led the way as he and Jasmine slowly walked beside Kav, supporting him. When they reached the exit, Babak and Jasmine helped Kav out, and they all emerged above ground. The sun was starting to set, turning the sky bright pink streaked with gold. The palace grounds seemed to glow. The three stood for a moment, enjoying the sight. Kav turned to Jasmine and Babak and thanked them again. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come to help me, he said. He took a deep breath before continuing. And I'm sorry I wasn't being very nice. I shouldn't have walked off like that. Jasmine and Babak both accepted Kav's apology and said, You're welcome. I'm covered in dirt, Kav said, embarrassed. He brushed his hands against his pants, trying to shake off the dust. Then he reached into his pockets and looked up at Jasmine as he pulled out handfuls of rubble. My treasure, he said, dropping the rocks on the ground. I must have lost it in the fall. Jasmine bent down and picked out 3 rocks from the pile. Here's a new treasure, and there's one for each of us, she said, handing each boy a rock and taking one for herself. Now we'll always have something to remind us of our great adventure together. Babak grinned from ear to ear, touched by Jasmine's gesture. Kav looked down at the dirty rock in his hand and felt its rough edges with his fingers. A jewel from the Princess of Agrabah, he said with a smile. Not exactly sparkling, but beautiful and mysterious, Jasmine said. Kav and Babak both thanked Jasmine and slipped the rocks into their pockets. Now we'd better get back, said Jasmine. It's late. Kav put his arms around her and Babak again. The trio slowly made their way toward the palace, with Raja following behind. The Sultan and Ghazi were anxiously waiting in the palace courtyard. Oh, thank goodness, the Sultan said when Jasmine appeared. He threw his arms around her and hugged her tightly. We were starting to get worried, Ghazi said. I was very worried, said the Sultan, finally releasing Jasmine from his hug. Ghazi and the Sultan looked down at Kav's foot as he held it gingerly off the ground. Kav explained that he had fallen and twisted his ankle. But Jasmine and Babak helped me, he added. Thank you both, said Ghazi, smiling at them gratefully. The Sultan's eyes met Babak's. Babak? He said. You are Aman's son, aren't you? Yes, Babak whispered nervously, bowing his head. And I'm sure he is looking for me, he added. The Sultan thanked Babak for helping Jasmine and Kav, and then Jasmine prepared to say goodbye. Good luck with the surprise, she whispered to her new friend as they parted. The Sultan sighed with relief as he rubbed his head. Let's go inside and sit down, he said. Kav, we can have the healer look at your ankle right away. After, you can both tell us what happened. I have a feeling you have a lot to share.